Tellement calibré.
Ça? C'est quoi l'ordre?
On est déjà en ligne. L'ordre, on va commencer par Mindaï, ensuite ce sera toi et ensuite ce sera Alejandro.
Combien de temps?
Une demi-heure en tout.
Non, mais par personne. Non,
3 minutes, 4 minutes, c'est une conférence de presse, donc c'est très rapide. Ça va?
Donc si tu fais 3 et 3, 6 et 6, 12, tu fais.
Après, il y a les questions.
Oui, mais il n'y a pas beaucoup de monde, donc...
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gerd Peter Bruch. I'm the founder of Planète Amazon. It's a French NGO. And we are here as the Alliance of Mother Nature's Guardians. Let me introduce you to the speakers. On the left is Alejandro Argumedo, from international coordinator of International Network of Montane Indigenous Peoples. On my right left is Mindai Bastida from the Center for Mother Earth Ethics. He's also a member of the Executive Committee of the Alliance of Mother Nature's Guardians. And on my right is Émilie Gaillard from the Normandie Chaire of Peace. So we're here today to talk about, sanctuarising forest, and an indigenous model to protect the forest. So before we go straight to the point, just a few words about who we are as the Alliance, meaning me and Mindahi. We represent the Alliance of Mother Nature's Guardian today. We have more brothers inside the cup, but you know how it is. They are called here and there. So the Alliance of Mother Nature's Guardian is an international movement for peace, in fact, and I think my brother Mindai is going to explain why it is related to peace. But we are mostly, working to protect future generations and humanity. And the movement was born in 2015 to the call of Chief Raoni from the Kayapo people in Brazil. He's traveling around the world for more than 30 years now. And he asked us, Planète Amazon, to try and help him create a new movement, to open a new pathway, because these indigenous leaders, traditional leaders from Brazil or elsewhere, are still thinking they are not heard in the process. They have their own process of consultation, and this doesn't fit to the UN. So it makes it very complicated to impose the indigenous knowledge and wisdom into the process of, trying to protect the climate, protect the forest, protect the oceans. So the movement was started during the COP21. We had the first document, a declaration of 17 proposals. And then in 2017, we went to Brasilia, and there was a huge meeting. We called that the Great Assembly. We gathered 200 indigenous leaders from 25 countries and their allies. And we did a declaration which is called the Declaration of the Alliance of Guardians and Children of Mother Earth. We have a version here, and you can find it on the web. This document is the reason why we're here today, because it's not only words, it is action. And we want to start implementing a very important project that we call sanctuarisation of forest. And the speakers today are going to explain why we don't believe that the UN process is going to save the forest, is going to save us, is going to protect the climate. So I want first to give word to Mindai Bastida. Like I said, he's into the Alliance from the beginning. He has been invited by people from the forest, the Amazon rainforest, to join the movement. So he knows that it's all connected. And he knows what's happening now in the UN, how they're pushing, the carbon market to try to pretend saving the forest. So you can now have your word.
Thank you very much. My name is Mindahi Bastida from the Center for Earth Ethics. And I like to highlight that indigenous peoples around the world, we are very connected to nature, as you know. And the cosmovision and the philosophy that we hold is very meaningful for the conservation of life, conservation of cultures, and what we call biocultural heritage. Biocultural heritage is composed by the deep interrelationship among indigenous peoples and nature and the cosmos. And around the world, in our territories, we live with nature. We live with the earth. We live with what we call Mother Earth, not from the earth. And this is very meaningful because the so-called hotspots around the world are mainly in indigenous territories. So it means that the cosmovision and philosophy that we still hold is meaningful for the conservation of biodiversity around the world. And the last report shows that 80% of the biodiversity in the world is in indigenous territories. So it's not, let's not take it for granted. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to preserve and conserve life. And we believe that the presence of human beings in this world is for the care of life. We believe that any institution and any one who is threatening life must adapt, must be resilient, must learn from indigenous ontologies and philosophies, and begin to live. And we are calling for the re-indigenization of the world. There is no other way that we can survive if we don't come together in a unification process with life. So the mission for human beings in this world is the protection of life, the care of life. So that's what we really need to take into consideration, because nowadays, half of the languages in the world has been lost. Now we have around 7,500 languages in the world, but most of them are indigenous, but many are threatened. So biodiversity, show the sacred sites of indigenous people, show the forests, because we are people of the forest as well. And we know that the forest is not just trees. Forest is a complex ecosystems that there are interrelations from the very tiny living beings and the cultures that have been developed. So we see climate change as a sickness of this modern life. And this sickness is threatening not just the life in the cities, but also threatening life in the small communities, especially the communities that live in the daily life in the communities that we are now facing floods, facing droughts, because of this, what is called climate change. But we are not responsible in the indigenous communities for this climate change. But climate change follows you everywhere. It doesn't matter if you go to the jungle, if you go to the forest or to the desert, climate change is all over the world. So that's what we are calling now for action. We are calling now not just, we don't believe in this world that is hope. Hope doesn't mean nothing if we don't take into our hands, into our brains, into our spirit, action. So we are calling for action as well as anybody around the world, because we are in this moment of what we call also civilizational crisis, based in a system that is threatening life in the capitalist system, in the neoliberal policies that are just taking over. And we know that we want to take care, not to take over. It's time to take care. and give care for life.
Okay. Thank you so much, Midday. Just before we go, we talk about what you want to impulse inside this project of sanctuarization of forest. A few concepts, very important concepts that are not, of course, included in the Paris Agreement. I'd like to ask Alejandro to give us, a general view of the, an assessment of the first week of the COP25 here in Madrid regarding, the protection of forests, of course, because we are talking of forests, but more generally about the fight against climate change.
Thank you very much. I think the week has been very slow in terms of negotiations, particularly regarding to forest and the issue of that is important for us. Ambitions are very low. I guess that was expected because the debate about ambitions will come next year, but nonetheless, because of what is really happening, it is very disappointing to see how little commitment governments are making in this regarding their ambitions. However, against this backdrop, I think last night we saw one of the biggest marches, environmental marches that this country has seen. And this, I think it's a strong message that it is civil society, it is communities, it is people outside this process who will actually make change. And we shouldn't expect much of what governments will decide in this, during this COP, when future COPs. I think in all this process, and regarding the issue of forests, there is a couple of issues that we must highlight, and I'll do it very quickly. One is that I think the UNFCCC is trying to replace one big injustice of climate change with another injustice that we call it the green economy or the green technologies. We are told to listen to the science. Governments are telling us that we don't have, the science tells us that we don't have much time, but nonetheless, we are extending the time to 2050. And with the idea that we need time to make transitions to a more green technologies. But this is legitimizing the further emissions of further carbon emissions. And in the process, even though the scientific evidence says that this shouldn't be happening, we're giving corporations the time to keep emitting while they transit or transition into new renewable or alternative energy or cleaner energies like solar and wind. But in doing this, you have corporations, you have big mining industries or companies going into forests to extract metals and minerals that are needed to produce these new green technologies. And just like the example, for instance, of the Congo Basin or Guinea, with 30% of the world bauxite reserves, which is very much needed to make electrical cars are produced. That's 90% of the country is covered in forest. 98% of the country is covered in forest. And nonetheless, mining companies are coming in to exploit those minerals and destroy those forests and displace thousands or hundreds of people. So in the name of this new technology, or to lower our emissions, we are making this big injustice of destroying ecosystems and abusing the rights of indigenous peoples. Congo is another big example. 60% of the world cobalt reserves is in there. It's a critical component for batteries, for small funds, or for high-capacity electrical cables. And again, you have companies coming in, start exploiting those resources and displacing people, displacing agriculture, and making more injustice in the name of reducing emissions. Red is another issue in tropical rainforests that needs to be looked from not just from the point of view of human rights, but to think about that the rights of all the rest of the species that live in these very diverse ecosystems are being not just infringed, but totally disregarded. So one can go on and on, because if you think about how wind power works and what type of gases actually they release in doing so, those are way more dangerous than the CO2 emissions that we are concerned about. So if we don't tackle those issues here, if they talk about human rights only focus on changing, quick changes, quick transitions so the big powers continue to be powerful, and indigenous peoples living in forests continue to be displaced and abused, we are just replacing one injustice with another that may be biggest one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Just to give you our vision about the Paris Agreement, a very short paragraph that is included in the declaration. We consider that the Paris Agreement is a trade agreement that does nothing but privatize, commodify, and sell carbon offsets for oceans, forests, and agricultural lands, allowing those who are the most responsible for greenhouse emissions not only to buy their way out of compliance for emission reduction, but also to make a profit of it. When you start such a project and you are very ambitious perspective and you want to impose new vision, you need partners. And we are very proud to have received the support of the Normandy Chaire of Peace, which Émilie Gaillard is a representative here today. And I'd like to give word to Émilie so that she can explain how we have started the collaboration and what are the projects for the future. There is an IUCN Congress on its way. It's going to happen on June 2020 in France.
Thank you very much, Gerd. Hello to everybody. I'm Émilie Gaillard, Director of the Normandy Chaire for Peace, dedicated to law for future generations. So I have some flyers if some of you are interested by this project. We have several lines of research dedicated to the protection of the future through law, and we are strongly believing that time has come to do a great convergence between different branches of law: environmental law, international human rights law, and also indigenous laws. Many people say that now it's becoming more and more obvious that indigenous wisdom is a strong level of help to protect the commons. So we need to renew the frame of legal concepts and logic. Why? Because we need to integrate complex thought into the laws. We need to integrate that everything is interrelated. For instance, when we want to defend through human rights lenses, rights of future generations, what does it mean? It means to renew how we understand this concept of right to life. The right to life is also the right to be born without contaminated pesticides in our blood, and this is a right for future generations, for us and for future generations, what I call transgenerational human rights. The right to water is also very important, and sanctuarisation of forests is a great project with whom we are doing a partnership with Planète Amazon, and we would like to emphasize on the need of integrating into law complex thought. Indigenous people have this complex thought from a natural point of view because their way of living on the earth is interrelated with nature, and they have also integrated the protection of the future generations. So the moment to create these great conventions has come, and the Normandy Chaire for Peace is going to organize several events, creating research program on that topic of forest, to go in several countries all around the world to see what are the different philosophies and ways to protect the forest. The goal is no less that the protection of our civilization. We are at a tipping point of choice of protecting the civilization. We're going to organize an event in Marseille at the museum, on the 10th and 11th of June, and one session will be specifically dedicated to this project of enriching law through the lenses of cosmovisions of indigenous people and sanctuarization of forest. Concerning the side event tomorrow, I will present a side event on the oceans from 1:15 to 2:45, room 1. The time for global ocean governments has come, recognizing the rights of marine ecosystems to protect the future of the future. So we have new steps now, new challenges, new choices in order to strengthen our legal concept altogether. So it's a new step going now with civil society, academics, and experts. And more and more people are aware, because of new scientific knowledge, that everything is interlinked. Occidental people need proofs, and we're having these proofs more and more. And the great convergence has come.
Thank you so much, Emily. Indigenous people, the way President Bolsonaro sees them, he wants to transform them in farmers. You see, because he's talking about them as cavemen. We are going to prove inside this movement, inside this project, Sanctuarization of Forest project, that they are not at all cavemen. We have a lot to learn from them. And we are very, very, very happy and very grateful that they allow us to be along with them. It's a reconciliation of process, this movement. And we will be implementing the project. We have, our vision is that we will be starting 2 pilot projects, one in Africa and one in Brazil. Africa, we are going to make a mission in Kenya. We will be, working with Magdalene Kaites from the Maasai people community. And they are caring about the Mao forest, where there have been a lot of destruction, where there have been a lot of eviction of indigenous people. We want to start there, for instance. And there is a second project. We are thinking about visiting Chief Ninawas from the Unikui people in the state of Acre in the Amazon forest of Brazil in the beginning of next year. And he has a very strong, vision, and it will be a very good field of experimentation. The concept that we want to impose in the project, for instance, of course, is the acknowledgement of the rights of nature, of the rights of Mother Earth, starting from the Declaration of Cochabamba. That is a wonderful document, but nobody is applying it. So we want to start applying this document inside this project. The second thing we want to impose is the recognition of the crime of the ecocide crime. We know that the ecocide is now a name, a word that people recognize, but there is no law to really define ecocide crime. So we really want to add that in this project, the sanctuarisation of forests. So that would be a perfect example. We have to start from the grassroots, you know, because there are a lot of people trying to get the ecocide crime adopted by the UN. It's impossible for now. We know that. So we want to impose that kind of project. And we also want to impose the concept of sacred sites and, you know, sacred water, Mindai.
Yes, one of the main initiatives that we have is the protection of sacred sites, what we call biocultural sacred sites of the world. As you know, sacred sites for indigenous peoples are mostly natural sacred sites, but also cultural sacred sites. So we are trying to work together now with UNESCO to develop an international regime that protects sacred sites around the world. Because there is no an international regime now that protects sacred sites in the world. There might be some examples of protection of sacred sites at the national level, and we need to protect sacred sites because we believe that forests and also sacred sites that are in the indigenous territories are key for the conservation of life, and we cannot protect biodiversity without protecting indigenous peoples and without protecting sacred sites. And another issue that I like to raise also is the protection of water. Water, not just a resource, because we see water as a sacred element. So we need to protect rivers, we need to protect lakes, we need to protect even the sea. Because it's not just thinking about the right to water, but also the right of water itself as a living being with a spirit. So we are developing these concepts to be shared in a widely based, and we believe that this is the time for action. This is the time to come together. We indigenous peoples, we are not going to continue doing this alone. We need allies. We need to work together with nation states, with civil society, and even corporations who understand that we are in risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindai.
Thank you, Mindai. So please, we are here to gain support. If you know some experts, if you want to get involved in the sanctuarization of forests, there are more details here. You can have the flyer after that, and you can have a flyer about the declaration of the alliance just after the conference, and we can discuss, because obviously there will be no time for Q&A here now. But we really need your support. So please join us. We don't have time. We know that the Amazon rainforest is dying and the other forests too. So one word of conclusion for each one of us. Emily, you start.
Okay, thank you very much. You are welcome. I will stay here with my card and the flyers, so you are welcome. It's a global goal.
Alejandro?
Yeah, let's hope that next week some concrete decisions that protect forests, indigenous people's rights, and give us some hope for the future comes about.
This is time for action. This is time to come together. This is time for working together and living together with nature, with Mother Earth.
So please share the sign of our alliance and our declaration. This is the home, the letter A, and the symbol of equality with the painting from the Amazon forest, the indigenous people from the Amazon forest. Thank you so much.